I'm Dylan Delaney, your paratrooper preacher.
You're a psychologist, you're a professor and retired at the moment.
That's right. I was a professor. I taught at university for 40 years. First of all at Rhodes University, and then at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. I retired in 2022, but I was always a clinical psychologist, and I really enjoyed being a psychotherapist. So I see patients 3 days a week, and gives me 4-day weekends, which I like very much. Yeah, and it helps me pay for some of these extravagances. I developed a network. Something of interest is that in 2007 I got a grant, and I developed a network of psychological services out of Duquesne University, which offered psychotherapy and consultations and some family work. We worked with the kids, but we also did psychological evaluations of veterans who had been denied benefits that they deserved. And we took up their cases, and we didn't lose a single case under appeal. The doctoral students did the assessments under my supervision. As I say, we didn't lose one under appeal. When we closed, when I retired, we had won over $400,000 a year in perpetuity for veterans with brain damage and PTSD. So I'm really rather proud of that accomplishment.
Wow.
And one more thing I'll say is that I was actually given the Pennsylvania Psychological Association's Public Service Award in 2018 for the work with veterans, and that meant I was keynote speaker in their 2019 convention, where I talked about a Jungian archetypal approach to treating combat PTSD, which draws a lot from our knowledge of traditional warrior cultures around the world.
So can you expand on that?
In a nutshell, I can say that what we have come to call PTSD, and with a set of symptoms and defined as a psychiatric condition, has been named and ritually addressed in all traditional warrior cultures around the world and through history. And all those cultures understood what we think of the symptoms as PTSD as initiatory experiences that sets the young warrior on the warrior's path of moral and spiritual development through the lifespan. And we can draw from our knowledge of those traditional warrior rituals for homecoming and transformation. We can draw from them and genuinely heal veterans who no longer think of their symptoms as PTSD, but actually will start sleeping through the night for the first time, sometimes in decades. It's been really rewarding work. It's not just trying to, we don't give them platitudes. We offer them something truly transformational.
Yeah. So explain how the warriors came home from battle.
The rituals of healing were essentially there's a sort of spiritual cleansing from the act of killing and the violence of killing, the violence of war. There is making peace with the dead, which includes the enemy dead. There is storytelling to the civilian community as well as other veterans, so that the experience of the veteran becomes part of the clan or the family legacy that can be honored and has dignity, and becomes part of the, as I said, part of the legacy. There's also then, and it relieves an individual warrior from this collage of chaotic images and violence and the moral trauma from suffering it alone. And it's genuinely redemptive to be able to put those into one's mother tongue, which is also the language of one's morality and ethics and normal and healthy conduct. So that to talk about it reestablishes the coordinates of sort of the ethical coordinates of our lives, so we can find our bearings again. So storytelling to the civilian community is important, and then continuing to be of service is very important. And part of that service is recognizing one's role and one's value to the culture as a veteran and as a warrior elder, so that we can offer guidance and steadiness to the young bucks who could do with our wisdom.
And how do you put that into South African context?
In South African context, it's very interesting. I would love to do a retreat with old South African paratroopers and their civilian counterparts. I've sometimes wondered whether it would be very interesting and effective actually to work with some of the enemy, the enemy at that time. I've known when enemy come together from a long time afterwards, they're often a kind of a hell use of we all survived the same battle. And you have guys saying, I would much rather have bought you a beer than tried to kill you. I mean, it's like from far up, there is often that. I remember one of our bats got a job at a school as a phys ed teacher in Johannesburg about 30 years ago. And there was a lot of anxiety in the school because they had one of the so-called terrorists from Rhodesia who now was working there at the school. The two of them hit it off as best friends, man. They discovered that he'd done a tour in the Rhodesia and where the guy was in the area of operations. So these old enemies were kind of firm buddies compared to all the civilians around who had no understanding of how they could sort of think of themselves as brothers in arms. When the war is over, it's over. And I don't think that story is unique. It's actually rather typical.
The aggression that in the young men that they train in.
Oh yeah. My father, at the end of World War II, in 1946, my father spent about 24 hours on a train with a German paratrooper who had fought in northern Italy. My father's brother was killed by German paratroopers in northern Italy. And my dad was just fascinated to hear about the war from his point of view. And they just talked and talked and talked all through the night and had breakfast together on the train all the way from Cape Town all the way to Windhoek. They just talked and talked and talked and talked. And that is typical, of course, of old warriors.
Wow, that's wonderful. And we'll carry on with this chat, Roger. Thank you. I appreciate what you...
Yeah.
Just personally, how you helped me.